Oh, that was a good throw, dude.
The master of CNN. I just got schmooed. Master of CNN. The mayor of Crazy Town, otherwise known as Fox News. The head of Trusted Sec, Dave Kennedy.
Woo! Thank you, thank you. First and foremost, special thanks to CircleCitycon for putting on an awesome conference. Here we go, come on. It takes a lot of time and effort to do what you're seeing here today. So kudos to somebody that wants to start from scratch and build a new con. Coming from DerbyCon, I know exactly how that goes, and it's always frightening the first year. I mean, I remember Martin and Alex and Adrian and ourselves were like, if this doesn't go well, we're totally screwed financially, and we're pretty much going to have to sell our house. But it worked out good. As I hear it's going well here today. I mean, to get the amount of attendees that you see here today is awesome. Hang on a second, let me fix my little thing here. Am I helping you out at all, Adrian? Is that better? My whole goal today is to try to mess up the video recording so much that Adrian has to spend another 2 hours just cutting everything out. No, but seriously, to put on a con like this is awesome, and I think hopefully this is one of many Circle City cons to come. I'm really impressed by everything that's been going on here, so it's a kudos to coming out here and just one amazing conference. And I wish I could be staying a lot longer. It's actually my twins' birthday today, and so I'm actually missing their birthday party a little bit right now. But as long as I get home in time, okay, I still can salvage my marriage a little bit. I just decided to leave without saying anything. I just left and she's like, hey, where are you at this morning? I'm like, oh, I'm in Indianapolis. She's like, what? I'm just kidding. So a little bit about me. I've done some fun stuff. I'm the CEO of Trusted Sec. I've been on TV and stuff. I try to balance out Fox News and CNBC and MSNBC and all the other ones out there so that I don't get labeled one way or the other. I hate them all, so it doesn't really matter which way I go as far as politics go. I'm a nerd. I'm a huge Doctor Who fan. Yeah. That's how I got here today, just traveled in my TARDIS. And that is my TARDIS, by the way. I have a full-size TARDIS. Right now it's in storage, so literally I go to the storage room and I unlock it and I build it again and I go inside of it and I play around and then I take it apart and put it back into the storage bin. So I'm working on it. I'm also a hugger and cuddler. I always have Paris with Jason Street and a lot of good memories with people out here. And that's the most important part, I think, about coming to cons like this is learning from other folks and just having a good time and being friends with everybody. I was a Marine at one point in time. That was in Bahrain. I like blowing stuff up. And I am one of the world's sexiest men alive. That's right. Been working on it. That pose is the sexy pose. So it's and most importantly, I love hanging with friends. I love meeting new people, especially coming to conferences like this. It's so great to see friendly faces I've seen before, except for Martin. And everybody else is just great. And less so Adrian now with the cotton candy vodka that I realize he's been drinking lately. But anyways. So this talk, I talk about the purple team. For me personally, I get to do a lot of things. I get to be on the defensive side with companies. I get to be on the audit side with companies. I get to be on the pen testing side with companies. And I see a lot of different variations. And coming from being a chief security officer of a Fortune 1000 company, defense is really important, right? We're trying to defend against attackers. And for those that are on the red team, our whole purpose and existence is to work with an organization to figure out what their exposures are so they can fix it and they can defend better against attackers. And so what this talk is really designed to be about is talking about where we're at today. And I think we've gone really well. I mean, I think we're doing really good as an industry. I think we're getting a lot better. I think there's a lot of things that are changing. I mean, I've never seen a time in InfoSec where it's all over the media. People are asking about things. I mean, like Heartbleed, for example, was like the coolest thing ever for us. I mean, like I had a guy. I was at a reception for my mom that got her, 15 years of anniversary at her company, whatever. And the guy next to me, started talking about how, Heartbleed was impacting his company and stuff like that. And the guy was like a sales guy. That's awesome. Like we've never had that type of opportunity before to get the visibility that we've ever had in InfoSec. So we can use that to build really what we're going forward with now. But unless we really change our patterns, we're going to be in some serious shit later on down the road because we've literally neglected security for the past 10 years. I mean, right or wrong? Right? We've neglected security for the past 10 years, but it's not because of us. We've been like, hey, we need to do this. We need to get more people. We need to get more money. We need to do this and this and this. And they're like, yeah, we can't do that. It's too much. Or, hey, you're good, doing 10 other responsibilities and stuff. You're fine. It's going to be fine. So we got 10 years of neglect. Now we got to figure out how to change that a little bit so that we can push forward to fix things a little bit better. Okay? And so if you look at the past, present, and future, I mean, we're continuing to see large data breaches. I think I've given this one bullet, I think I've kept in my slides for the past 10 years, just to see if it changes. And so we've seen large data breaches over the past few years. Nothing's changed. And really, it's a result of just lacking security practices. It only takes an attacker one flaw to get into an organization. And the blue team, the people that are on the defense, have to be right 100% of the time. And so as attackers, our job is so darn easy. I mean, we have the easiest job in the world. And I'll talk about that and what we do as far as getting into that. But really, I mean, if you look at the breaches that have happened, whether it's, I'm not going to go through each company because we all have lapses in security. Although probably the worst response ever in history, eBay. That was awesome. That was 1993 response. It's like, hey, we're not going to put anything on our website. We're not going to notify users. And then we're going to have our PR person say, hey, we don't have the capability of sending emails to our users. Then an email comes out to all of our users the next day. That was awesome. It's like, hey, if we need to improve anything, we need to focus on that, right? So you have issues right now, and I'm not faulting eBay in any way, shape, or form, because we all get owned. It just happens. But the response and how you actually handle that is pretty important. I mean, there's a lot of things that we can do to improve ourselves. So really, it's just one simple flaw that typically gets an attacker in. It's usually nothing sophisticated to get us into an organization. And so if you look at the reason, I mean, is anybody here work for a corporation, a company that does anything on the defense? Few? We got a lot. That's great. Do any of you have enough funding for your security program? No, hell no, right? Does anybody have enough people for the security program? Hell no, right? So you don't have enough people. And let me ask a question. So is anybody here dedicated to security in their organization? Okay, that's great. What's your ratio for a hacker to a person in IT? How many security people to how many IT people? Say it. No. 8? So you have 1 security person to 8 IT people in your group. Probably even bigger than that, right? What about a couple of numbers? 30, 40, 50? Not unheard of, right? Some people are the single man in the security shop, and there's 200 security or IT people, 1 to 200. That's impossible for us to be able to understand what's going on every single day, right? Do you know every single IT project that's going on? No, and we all laugh because it's that's not possible. We all laugh at that. So we have all of these IT projects going on, so we try to control that with best practices and baselines and all of these templates and what they have to follow for policies and standards and all this other stuff. But I mean, we're human, right? We make errors all the time. And we can't track those because we don't have enough people to sit there and track down 200 IT people to our 1 security person. So now you have that problem. Now let's start talking about data. I love the, anybody see the RSA keynote? The CEO of RSA gave a keynote at RSA. Anybody see that? Anybody watch that? SIM is dead. The SIM is dead. Kick your SIM out the door. We got to focus on big data analytics. Let me ask you a question. Does anybody here understand where all of their data is in their company? Where all their assets are? What projects are important to the company? Maybe a little bit? Hell no. So how are you going to even do big data analytics on something where you don't even know that? You don't know where your assets are at to protect them, so where are you going to do big data at? And what's great is I love how RSA barely has a SIM, and all of their stuff's in big data. So it's hey, ditch the SIM and go with all of our big data stuff because we're going to push the industry in that direction because that's going to be the next buzzword for the next couple of years. It's bullshit, all right? So you look at that, and we have all of these things here. So we don't know where our data is at. And so as an attacker, I break into your organization, and I exfil 2 terabytes of data out over Google Drive. Are you going to notice that? Hopefully? Yeah, it's hopefully, right? It's pray to God that the stars align and we can hopefully detect something crazy that's going on in our environment. It doesn't happen because we don't know what data is going in there anyway. We have Link and our SharePoint sites and all of this other stuff in our Oracle infrastructure, and that's changing. And Oracle patches take 6 days, and it changes the whole dynamics of Java. And now all of a sudden you have all these different patterns of behavior going on the network. All this stuff changes all the time. So we have all these packets flying back and forth and gigs and terabytes of data going back and forth on the internet, back and forth. And we have no idea what's legit or not. There's no way we can. With our 1 security person to the 200 IT people, and then take that. What's the ratio between a security person and your entire company? It's jokeable, right? If I was in a 40,000 person company, when I first started there, we had 2 security people. Now we grew that to 55, that's still a horrible ratio. So there's nothing that we can do personally to say, okay, we're going to be able to detect APTs. That's ridiculous, okay? We're going to be able to do this because it's ridiculous. You have to hope that the predefined stuff that we built into all of our technology, the things that we put as far as our process, that's our reliance right now on detection. So if our Snort IDS doesn't go off, or our antivirus doesn't go off, which that's a whole other thing. If it doesn't go off, you're not going to be able to see it, right? Because we're relying off of what we have today in technology. And so if you look at the over-reliance on technology, that's one of my biggest problems in the security industry that we have to fundamentally change, or else we're going to just shoot ourselves in the foot 5 years down the road, 10 years down the road, to where we're almost unrepairable. And I hope that we do a different strategy, because I want to be in a situation where security is working, because my consulting practice relies off of it. So please start doing things right so that we can have security later on, and then we just don't blow everything up and there's no technology anymore. Just kidding. I mean, kind of. But let me ask you a question. So no one here raised their hand for having enough security budget, right? No one here raised their hand for not having enough people, right? Is that right? Does anybody here have enough people and enough funding? So, okay, not one hand. Good. Just checking. So what do we do when we get funding? What's the first thing we do? We buy something, right? It's like, oh, hey, Palo Alto's have their new next generation firewall out. We got to go with that. You know? Meanwhile, you have 10 years of institutional knowledge in your firewall team of ASAs. You're going to pitch all of that out the window. Literally, you're going to do like the Palo Alto import from the ASA. You're going to import all your old shit from 10 years into your Palo Altos, and then you're going to start monitoring on stuff, hoping to detect your next generation threat. Even though we're not doing any compartmentalization of networks, like network segmentation and stuff, because that would just be ludicrous. Like, salespeople can't get to R&D, and R&D can't get to, your next generation products, or whatever it ends up being. You're not doing any of that, but your next generation firewall is supposed to stop all that. Or, hey, we haven't even looked at what our application does, but we're going to slap a WAF on it, expecting it to stop attacks. It's crazy. Now let me ask you a question. When you take an ASA out that's been there for 10 years and you put a Palo Alto on, what happens? What's that? I didn't hear it. It tips over. Well, that too. What you do is you introduce a significant amount of complexity to your environment. So now you've had a defined process, which I'm not saying was good or bad, but now you have a whole new thing of complexity where you don't have enough people in the first place, you don't have enough funding in the first place, yet you still have this brand new solution that costs you $1 million that introduces complexity. And then on top of that, let's just say you implement a new security product, which, oh my God, right? We put in like DLP. And you don't have enough people in the first place, so now your focus goes on DLP. Now vulnerability management takes a thing to the side, because you don't have enough time to focus on vulnerability management, or this other blinky thing that you bought a couple years ago. So this over-reliance of technology is a problem right now that we have. And I mean, anybody here a pen tester? Few? Good. Is there any time that a security product has really stopped you hardcore? No. Right? You got to tweak it just like a little bit. Does anybody know what next generation firewalls, what they do? No. Closer. It's antivirus for the network. Friggin' signatures of like, hey, this is what my interpreter looks like. So just change a couple things and you're good to go. Like exfil 2 terabytes out and be blatant about it. Like, hey, I'm going to exfil out like all of your personal data and everything, all your credit cards in your database, and I'm going to hit everything. And I'm going to exfil over clear text over your next generation firewalls because I can. So, this is the way that we're at today, and it's frustrating because, you look at the market and the products have taken over our market. It's changed from us being hackers and us focusing on understanding what our flaws are to, hey, if we slap a product in, somehow it's going to fix those flaws in 10 years of neglect. It doesn't work that way. And it's the same shit. It's the same shit every day. The methods of attack haven't changed. My technique from 10 years ago is the same technique I use today. I may modify it a little bit. There might be easier ways of me deploying it. But today, this method, SQL injection, or friggin', we still have MS-0267 everywhere. It's ridiculous, right? Like, that is the easiest pen test. Please, if you have MS-0267 in your environment, just tell me ahead of time, and I'll charge you like half the cost, because it's only going to take me a couple minutes, and then I can sit there the rest of the day and code a cool new tool and set. Like, that's what I do. It's like, the first day I own everything, I get access to all the intellectual property, I'm like, well, shit, I have a whole nother week out here. So and what's great is you have like this huge environment, so I can test out cool new shit. And so now I write no modules to set. I put a couple Git this morning, but I woke up at 3 a.m. to get here, so I forgot it. I was going to have my drone flying as I presented, but that didn't work out so well. We're back good? All right. Okay, so we're not back in black. We're back out of black. So confused. So listen, so out of today's presentation, what do we get? How to get a goat to shoot a gun. So if you can leave here with one thing, that's it. All right? All right, so today pen testing, okay? We walk into a place, and this is us. This is our life. We walk in like this. This is how I walk into a customer. It's just walk in, we fuck shit up, and then we walk out like this. Yeah. We're all high-fiving. I mean, how many times, if you looked at our Trusted Sec, we have what's called a Trusted Sec annoy list, and it's where we send emails back and forth to each other. If you saw the amount of stuff where we're like, yeah, I just got domain admin and blah, 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 blew stuff up and, got access to all this, and here's, we did all this, and it was just an awesome hack, and here's how I did it. We do that because we want to learn from each other, which is important, how we did a hack, and especially if it's a new one. But at the same time, we're all high-fiving because we just destroyed this company. And we took everything from them, right? Everything that they consider sensitive and holy, we just fucked up and we walked out like we're the boss, right? And after that, the defensive folks. So the defensive folks, your job is to fix the shit that we blow up, right? So you fix all the stuff that we blew up. You fix it all. So you hey, MS-067, I fixed it. It's not going to be here next year. And it's there next year, right? Or SQL injection, we fixed it here, but you haven't fixed your developers, and it's like all over the place now. It's not in just one place. It's like 40 places now. It's spread out. It's like HIV. That's a bad example. It's like herpes. There we go, because it's curable. There we go. Thank you. So, we blow stuff up. And then on top of it, now you want to start incorporating blind tests. Like, hey, we want to test our incident response in our monitoring and detection program because we don't do shit. We outsource it to an MSSP, and they don't do shit. We just want to test to make sure that they don't do shit. That's all we want to do. So we do the blind testing, and we might do covert. By the way, is there still kids in here? I forgot about that. No kids? Okay, thank God. Whew. Yeah, but I mean, if there's kids in here, I wouldn't have been doing one of them, especially the anus one. That's the worst. So if you look at this, we have the cyclical effect, and it happens every year. I mean, we go into a customer every year, and we own them every year. And it's like, hey, we think we fixed MS-067 everywhere, and then we use Responder and get creds everywhere, and then we're like, hey, we just owned you in 2 minutes anyway, there we go. And they're like, what in the hell is that? How do I fix that? And you fix that, and next year we're using something cool and the other that's badass. So every year it's something different that we do as attackers because we're creative. Whereas on the defensive side, you're like, man, I'll get to the defensive side. So pen testing for me today isn't working. I mean, technically, we're not even doing pen tests today. Most people just run scanners and like, hey, we're going to run Metasploit. Then all of a sudden now we have full access into your environment, and now that's our pen test. We're not simulating adversarials. Some people have moved to the term red team to kind of differentiate themselves from the pen testing place. It's all the same shit. I mean, it's like, hey, we're different because we use Rapid7s and Expos instead of Nessus for our initial scans to detect you versus Qualys, or hey, no, we use Qualys now, so we're better than the person that uses Rapid7 to do your Nessus scan. They're all vulnerability scanners. They all do the same thing. It's not how we're supposed to be doing things. It's not a pen test. It's not simulating a hacker. And at the same time, here's one area that I was wrong at. So has anybody heard of the Penetration Testing Execution Standard, or P-Test? A lot of people. That's great. So I was part of the team that helped create P-Test, right? And I was wrong when I started. We made this big mind map, and it's funny. The funny story about the mind map is when we did the mind map, it started off with like a nice flow chart, and then like penises started getting drawn on it, and then just got worse and worse and worse over time. So if you look at the original map, and Nickerson still has it. It's like the most vulgar like P-Test mind map that you've ever seen in your life. But it's worth it. We got a lot of stuff out of there. But one thing I was wrong on in this is that when we do covert or blind testing, it really doesn't do a lick of good for an organization because we don't really have monitoring detection today, period. And so what you do when you do covert testing is you try to simulate a blind attacker, right? Because you want to test that portion. And we know that when we move to things like an MSSP, and an MSSP may work if they understand your assets, but what happens, if you have like an internal, did anybody here have an internal monitoring detection program, moved it out to an MSSP? That's the shift now. I don't know if you know that. Most companies, almost all companies are moving to that, right? And so you have a place where you had people that understood your environment and your network, and you plop all that out and you move it out to an MSSP and you say, hey, deal with it. So now basically you're getting snort rules, and you're getting antivirus detection, And maybe like, hey, someone added a domain admin to your account, which sucks right after the fact that it happens, right? So you have these basic things that you're logging or you're detecting on, which is nothing. And so right now we're not doing much when it comes to covert. We don't need to do covert. And so for me personally, if you look at the blue team, let me guess, you're working 10 million, you have 10 million projects, you're overworked, you're understaffed, you only have to make one mistake for the entire organization to fall flat. On top of that, you're dealing with a meeting for a meeting on a meeting to talk about a meeting to fix a flaw with one team because you already have 6,000 other ones here you have to meet with other business owners with to fix. And then you have your 1 to 200 person ratio IT people going off and making changes that are breaking it even more. It's a never-ending battle. So we need to evolve. We need to get better. I mean, I know for us as attackers, going in and blowing stuff up is sexy and it's fun and it's exciting and everything else. I understand that. But in order for us to be able to actually defend, for the industry itself to be able to defend, we have to change our techniques. I mean, let's just take an example here. Is anybody here good at web apps? Okay? Is the same people that raised their hand for web apps, are you amazing at exploit development? No, right? Any exploit development people here? No? Couple people? Are you exploit developers awesome at web apps? Are you awesome at forensics? Are you awesome at SIM detection? Are you awesome at vulnerability management? We have all of these niches in the industry, and we're all completely different. Like me as a pen tester, I mean, shit, the pen testing field has what? We have people that specialize in web apps, networking, operating systems, mobile exploitation, normal exploitation, OS X exploitation. I mean, you name it, we have so many different fields just in the red team piece itself, let alone what you have to do on the blue team. We're not sharing information together. And so in order for us to evolve, we have to start, oh, that's not the right one. We need to start looking at the purple team. And what the purple team is, and I had to Google this, what it makes when you take red and blue, it makes purple. I'm not good with colors, apparently. So you put them together, and it makes purple. And I actually tried it with a crayon with my son, and it works. So it's a combination of both the defensive folks and the offensive folks working together to learn from each other. These are people that specialize on defense, because you know defense better than anybody else in the world, in your environment. Red team, I understand breaking into your environment better than anybody else. When you put the two together and you learn off each other, guess what happens? You start to build things that aren't just like, hey, I need to fix this one vulnerability here, I need to fix this one vulnerability here. You come up with ideas and solutions that can actually fix your entire corporation from a security perspective. I mean, I'm talking like big things that aren't like on the nano level of fixing this one flaw over here. This is big things that can actually stop attackers in its tracks. That's the stuff we got to start doing. Like, we have the most brilliant minds working on the defense and the most brilliant minds working on the offense. Why not put the two together to figure things out? Sounds pretty good. I mean, I learned so much. Like, when I go on a blue team effort, when I'm working with a customer and we work together, I figure out how people defend so much better. And conversely, it has a negative effect sometimes, so I figure out how to break in better. But at the same time, they learn off of me of like the exact techniques I'm using, how I'm doing it, the ways to fix it, and then they come up with like brilliant ideas like, oh, dude, I have this thing here. If I did this, it stops everything. I'm like, no, it doesn't. I've got to figure out a way around that. But it does a good thing here, all right? And so, if you look at the initial pen testing, you only do, for the first few years, 0 blind tests. You're working together. I mean, if you need to do something for like a checkbox for PCI, I'll go ahead, or someone will go ahead and run a Nessus scan for you, and then you detect that. And then from there, you start diving into an actual pen test. And then from there, you can start learning from each other, okay? And the purpose isn't to say, well, I'm going to write a signature for this, I'm going to write a signature for this. I mean, look at this, okay? This is a p-test. And this is the whole methodology, I guess, of a pen test, or what we define as a pen test. Now, obviously, attackers are fluid, and they change, and they're dynamic, and things might go different. But as a defensive person, let's just take the intelligence gathering phase, which is mostly open source intelligence, understanding an organization, going through their websites, learning their business, all that stuff, right? So take this phase here. How would you, in the defense, stop OSINT? On the defense side, if you're a defensive person, how do you stop OSINT? User awareness, very good. That is spot on. So let me just take an example here, and I have an example here. Let me skip ahead here really quick. So here's trolling PepsiCo, okay? Now, I have nothing against Pepsi, although I like Coke better. Diet Coke's amazing, Coke Zero. Yeah, that's right. I think Jason Street drinks just Pepsi, doesn't he? Diet Pepsi? Huh? So sorry, Jason. I apologize for this. Again, this is just open source intelligence, not doing anything wrong with Pepsi in any way, shape, or form. But the amount of information you can find about an organization and their defenses is astronomical. I mean, we all love bragging about ourselves on LinkedIn, like how awesome we are at ArcSight or Symantec or whatever the hell we do. We put everything on there. Like, you put your whole security program in your bio. Like Pepsi, for example. hey, it's great to know that you guys just implemented ArcSight. You managed an ArcSight implementation. Okay, good. So now I know your monitoring detection program. Let's go on further. You have F5 big IPs, which probably means you have the F5 web application firewall stuff, so I know which bypass I need to use for web application firewalls. Great. Use Qualys because it's in your recommendations and endorsements. I love endorsements. Those are great, especially the ones where people put like I'm a cat herder and stuff like that. Those are the amazing ones. They use semantic control compliance suites. You can see here Microsoft patching, semantic endpoint protection right there. Great, good stuff. They have a Citrix environment, mostly a Microsoft shop. They use semantic Ubuntu, semantic endpoint protection 11 and 12. They use the Foundstone one looks like it's a bit old. They use CA SiteMinder, Federation Management. Great, good to know, right? So just by doing a quick search through Pepsi, I found that pretty much the majority of their defense is there, right? I mean, you could grab, hey, they use Palo Altos or whatever firewalls if you dig enough. So how do you stop that phase as an attacker or as a defensive person? What's that? Yes, sir. Absolutely 100% right. You make a policy that says, listen, you cannot put specific technologies about our defensive capabilities in the organization, and you monitor that stuff. Boom. All of a sudden, you just took an attack avenue that I would normally use to go after you. Now, you're not going to be able to stop everything, obviously. Now, looking at, what about other things like metadata and PDFs? Combing your sites looking for stuff like that. Yes, sir.
Well, those of us who were involved in the industry would use COSINT to gather information about the organization. The organization needs to be doing its own COSINT to find out what's being said about
Absolutely.
what they're doing or saying.
Absolutely.
They need to be asking that as well. Not waiting for institutions just to come and say, hey, by the way, we found out all this information about your company. It's not just about
Completely agree.
not to do it, but they need to be active.
We have to be on the blue team side, actively looking at what our organization's doing for the type of information that we leak out to the public, because information is rampant out there. And interesting enough, guys and gals, we have such an opportunity right now here because of what's going on in the security industry. Board of directors are asking about what's going on. People are like, hey, what do I need to do? What do I need to do? We have the ability now to change things for the right way. So looking at the whole life cycle of an attack and starting to build defense around that, like, hey, one of my fun examples here is my next slide. My next slide is port scans. Who's stopping? So let's just say I profile my external perimeter, and I know that I only use 84, 43, 25, and 53 as my baseline, okay? If you touch me in any other port other than that, what should happen? Bloop, right? Yep, everywhere, right? Gone. You just can't touch my assets and shit. What's that going to do to me as an attacker? Switch to an IP and have to go to another one and switch to another IP? It sucks. As a pen tester, we're like, listen, man, I understand that you guys have got some crazy shit going down right there. Can you just whitelist me? Because I'm tired of having to get blocked and I just burn through all my IP addresses. So just simple stuff. And that's easy to do. That's like, you probably have it in your firewall right now to be able to do that, right? And what does that do, by the way? If you ban just based on basic port scans, what does that do? What does that one simple thing do? What's that? Adds time, but it also reduces the noise. So now you've, say, eliminated like 80% of the BS that's out there. Okay, now you're only focusing on 20%. 20% is a lot more manageable number than the 100% that I have to deal with. That's the wild, wild web. Right? So now I'm only focusing on 10%. And then I start to home down a little bit more. I get like web applications now covered in it. And I start looking at other things like internal systems, assets, stuff like that. Now all of a sudden, I pay it down to 5%. What does that do? Makes it a little bit easier, right? Now we can start to see what's actually happening, a focus on actually monitoring detection. But again, on the defense, would you have done that? We don't think about that stuff, right? We're too busy. We're dealing with 10 million other things. So how many people here block simple stuff? A couple, that's great. Got to get a lot more. So I already talked about this. Skipped ahead a little bit. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to show you two demonstrations. And this is going to be a game, okay? It's going to be the red team versus the blue team. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you two attack scenarios that I use very heavily on organizations. And then what you're going to do from the blue team perspective is I'm going to give you a list of multiple choice, and you have to tell me which ones are the best solution for you to actually fix, okay? And you can pick multiple ones. So if it's A through D, you can pick A, B, C, and D, or A and D, or A and C, or whatever the other combination you have, okay? Make sense? All right. So I'm going to use the social engineer toolkit. By the way, I just released 6.0.3. Interesting enough, I found a lot of websites have started to put mitigating controls that if a cloned web page comes from a separate domain that isn't theirs, they have JavaScript that actually renders it useless. So I actually wrote a filter that scrapes all that out so you can still use it and doesn't have to go to the website. So like Twitter was using it, wrote it for that, so it gets around all that stuff. So that's in 6.0.3. And then 6.0.2 was pretty cool. I added PowerShell injection through Microsoft SQL. So you can basically do direct interpreter memory injection through PowerShell through Microsoft SQL, which is pretty sweet. So that was in 6.0.2. Anyways, so we're going to go in the social engineer toolkit. I'm going to go to social engineering attacks number 1. I'm going to do the website attack vector, number 2. Now, what I like about this one is that it's really dirty in the sense that it takes complete advantage of your education awareness program. Like we tell our users so many set things in every single company no matter what it is. Like my favorite one is the hover. Everybody heard about the hover? Hover over the link, make sure it's legit, right? Make sure you're going to a right domain name. We teach our users that because we want to tell our users that if you hover over a link, it's safe, right? Well, I'm about to destroy your dreams and hopes here. So number 5, which is called the webjacking method. Now, what's interesting about this one is what I typically do is I'll comb the external presence. I'll do OSINT on an organization, and I'll find a website that looks legit, whether it's a benefits website or an extranet or a VPN or OA or whatever it ends up being. I'll look for something that's similar to them that they would be familiar with, right? And then what I'll do is I'll whip up some cockamamie scheme that looks believable in every way. So benefits or things like that, and I'll send a formal email to them. And a lot of times what I'll do is I'll send like an email to their public relations person saying, hey, I want to do a story on you. And they send me an email back, and that email has in the description how they sign their names, their position titles, all that stuff, phone numbers, the structure of how they format all their emails so you make it look believable. And I'll register a domain name that's relatively similar to them. And I'll send out an email, and the first link that they click on is not malicious in any way, shape, or form. 0 exploit code, 0 attacks, no credential harvesting, nothing. Because I want to build rapport and trust first. And I know that if I can defeat the hover link stuff, it's a pretty good chance of being. I'll even put in the website, like make sure you hover over a link and you're not being phished by a scam. Make sure it's legitimate, like benefits.trustsec.com. Make sure it's that because it's got to be legit, right? So we hit number 5. I'm going to do a site cloner. And I'll just do Gmail because it has a username and password field. It's super easy. So it ends up being accounts.google.com. Everybody familiar with that? So I'll do Gmail. And then in the new version of set, I use Apache for the crux of everything. So let me show you something here real quick. Remove harvester. 1 second. 613. OK. So you look at that, it's a blank file, right? Good? I'm going to go over to here to my Windows machine, which is Windows 8. And this attack is great because it works on IE, Firefox, Chrome, you name it. If people still use Opera, I think it works on that. I haven't tested it, though, because I don't think anybody uses it. Let me see what my IP is real quick here. Hang on. I might have messed it up. 134, 146, that's why. All right, everybody see that? Now again, I would make a believable looking website, right? I'd outlay it. This is just a demonstration. But I'd make it say, make sure you hover over the link, make sure everything's legit. This is what's going to happen for your benefits enrollment. Now when I hover to the link, what's in the bottom left there? What does that say? Accounts.google.com, right? So is that safe? Well, you say no now, but would you have said no before I came in this class? Looks legit, right? It looks legit. Would we throw errors as a security person looking at that? If it looked legit? No, right? So watch what happens here. I'm actually going to physically be at accounts.google.com. My machine is actually going to contact the accounts.google.com server. We're going to negotiate HTTP. Everything's going to be good to go. I'm going to be on that website for all intents and purposes. And I'm going to do a quick switcheroo, right? Magic. Right? I'm just going to click it. Okay, I'm not going to do anything crazy. Click, right? I'm not like hovering over another link or anything, right? Head accounts. Oh, I did. That was an accident. I actually jumped it over. Just checking it in. See that? All right. I click it. Boom, I'm at accounts.google.com. Quick switcheroo. By the way, this works with NoScript as well. It's not Java. So I enter my username. This is my password. Redirects to the legitimate site. And then here I got the creds, right? There we go. So that defeats the hover stuff. So, simple techniques that you can use that, and literally that's like nothing. It's like 3 lines of HTML stuff. It's ridiculous. It messes people up pretty bad. I feel dirty after it too. It's just like. And the next one is one that you're probably familiar with because it's my favorite one, is the Java Applet attack. Now, if you haven't seen what I changed in the new version of set, you're missing out. The new version of set with the Java Applet, I'm just going to clone TrustedSec as an example. So the new version of set with a Java applet, what it does is it, what am I doing on time? I got to hurry up a little bit. What the Java applet does is it actually, when it doesn't require any type of exploit, okay? So you're using how Java is just designed to suck. And so you attack it in a way that even if you're running the latest and greatest and updated Windows 8, Windows 7, whatever, doesn't make a difference. It still exports your computer. And what's nice about the new version of the Java applet is it does smart detection and probability detection on its best reliable method of exploitation. So it'll actually build a profile on the computer prior to execution and finding out the most reliable exploitation technique, and then it compromises the machine that way. So whether it's Excel injection or VBA injection or PowerShell injection or straight up binary droppers, it looks for the best way of actually compromising the machine and then compromises it. What's great about this technique here is it doesn't touch disk. So it's all memory resident. It injects shellcode into memory. It bypasses the PowerShell and code, execution restriction policies if you're using the PowerShell method. It dynamically creates everything. It actually manually patches the shellcode real time, so it gets into memory pretty good. So it's really effective. And what sucks about that is it literally gets around like application whitelisting, next generation firewalls, you name it, it's pretty awesome. And it's proxy aware, so your HTTP proxies, what's great about web attacks is like when they go to the website, you already know they've already authenticated to the proxy, so you're good to go. So now you just hook into the proxy settings in IE, and then boom, you're pivoting out of the network and you're set, right? Would anybody detect that, by the way? No, right? Of course not. Now what's even better is number 15 or 16, the PI injector, multi-PI injector, two of my favorites. If it actually relies off of the executable dropper method, if you're using something like a FireEye, which I love FireEye, by the way, sarcasm, it gets around that too, because what does this executable here do? Anybody know? What's this exe do? Nothing. Zero. You double click it, no registry hooks, no callouts, absolutely nothing. This thing does jack. It just literally loads and exits. That is it. Is that good to go? Right? Anything suspicious about that? Anything you need to write signatures on with it? No? But if you give it a dynamic cipher key and an AES-256 encrypted shellcode string, it decrypts it in real time in memory and then runs executables for it, or runs the program for you real time. So that gets around a lot of the good stuff that's out there. Things like executables and application whitelisting, not necessarily, but the PowerShell injection techniques are great. And what's great is I'm so happy. This is the April deadline for Windows XP was the biggest, happiest day of my life because everybody had to move to Windows 7, Windows 8, which guarantees me PowerShell, which is like the godsend of everything for me as an attacker. So thank you for upgrading Windows XP. You made yourself worse. So I love it. I love it. When I run into Windows XP, I'm like, oh man, I got to go to like some crazy lame exploits like VBA injection. But hey, I got Windows 7. I can just exploit you no matter what. It's great. All right. So we run the Java applet attack, and you can make it believable in whatever you want. Obviously, this is to your own creation here. Oh, I should do Windows 8.1, I guess. Which, by the way, Windows 8.1 broke the bypass UAC stuff. I got a workaround for that, and I'll be publishing it up to GitHub on Metasploit shortly, so it's all fixed. I just got to clean up the code. HT is really anal about his code. So, like, last time I sent him a module, he's like, dude, he sends it back like an hour later, and he says, dude, this thing's awesome, it's great, nice job. And I look at it, and it's like none of my same code. He rewrote the whole thing. And I'm like, you're such a dick. I'm like, it wasn't that bad. He's like, yeah, it's pretty bad. I'm like, okay. That's why you should have went to Python instead of Ruby. I'm just kidding. So you run the website. If you got Java installed, here's what happens. There it goes. So, I mean, obviously you can make this whatever you want. The name you can make whatever you want to. The publisher field is locked in. But what's great about code signing certs is literally all you have to do is register what's called a doing business as, which is like $20. And then you buy your code signing cert. You can be doing business as whatever. I have like 40 doing business as. I like doing business as this applet is verified and secure. Doing business as this is legit. Doing business as trust me, this is secure. Doing business as this is malware. Please don't click run, but you're going to anyway, so it doesn't make a difference. You can do whatever you want to, right? And then just register and buy a code signing cert, and you're good to go. So you hit run. It redirects back to the legitimate site. Now Emmet's flagging on an SSL mismatch, by the way. So everybody turns off certificate pinning anyway because it's the most annoying thing ever, so you don't have to worry about that in real-life deployments. And here we get our shells. Okay, that was with Emmet 4.1 running in full protect mode, so good to go. All right, so I showed you two examples. I'm going to give you a multiple choice list as A, B, C, or D, okay? And you have to tell me which one you would pick. All of the above. Yes, sir, you are correct. I think I have a challenge coin. Hang on, let me see if I still got one. Because that was a really tough one I need to give you a challenge coin for. I mean, I don't have any challenge coins left. Sorry, dude. I do have a piece of paper, though. All right, for real. A, B, C, or D? For scenario 1. That was a Java applet attack. D, A. All the above. Yes, 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 yes. So for executables, most malware drops in either temp or all users profile period. So you lock those down, you literally eliminate like 80% of the bullshit that you're going to find from malware infections. Also, you actually have application whitelisting built into group policy right now. It's called App Locker or software restriction policies. Within App Locker, you can actually turn off PowerShell for regular users. Disallow the PowerShell executable for regular users, what do? Stop PowerShell injection, right? Easy, and you don't affect anything else. So now you just stop PowerShell injection for all of your normal users, which shouldn't be running PowerShell in the first place. Now all of your admins and updates and everything else can still go good to go. Now you just stopped one of the exploitation methods was set. Awesome. Good job, blue team. Yeah, and then remove Java or secure it if possible. Securing it's kind of relative. Anyways. Another thing's bulletproof. I mean, I've showed bypass techniques of how to get around software restriction policies, how to execute PowerShell commands even when app blocker is enabled. But it's a layered defense, right? I mean, there's ways of getting around everything. It's just a matter of what you do. This is a technique that I recently released that was called the Magic Unicorn Attack, which basically takes Metasploit shellcode, wraps it, and patches it for both 64-bit and 32-bit platforms. So you can run native 32-bit shellcode on a 64-bit platform with one command. So it's literally you copy and paste this, you run this tool, and it gives you a copy and paste command that you paste into a Windows environment that you have access to. So whether or not you get code execution or stuff like that, it'll actually give you a shell purely memory resident, regardless of what PowerShell settings they have in place. And that's the new one I recently added for Microsoft SQL. So that was getting an interpreter shell through PowerShell injection on Microsoft SQL. So scenario 2 is a tough one because it relies off of education awareness, which is a tough one to do. So let's take a look here, A, B, C, or D. Maybe it says D, tackle them. It's A, B, and C. Education awareness is key. Seeing anomalies or things that are suspicious. Some technological controls could possibly help. One of my big favorite ones is on your content filtering software you have, whether it's a Blue Code or ScanSafe or whatever else it is, there's what are called unclassified or uncategorized sites. And what that does is if something hasn't been categorized yet, it doesn't allow it, which actually stops about 90% of your phishing attempts. No shit. And relatively low impact to your business applications. And what's nice about uncategorized, well, what's funny about it is, so most attackers don't spend the time to submit their own malicious website to the ones, but if you do, there's no prerequisite. You just submit it as like whatever, and then they're like, hey, you're cool, good to go. Even though you have like backdoors and stuff running on your stuff, they'll still categorize you. It's just another step that we have to do as attackers. What's funny is I'm not going to say which one this is, but if you clone one of the content filtering's websites, their own website, and you submit it, they actually classify you as a content filtering website. It's ridiculous. So A, B, C, and D, or A, B, and C. Now some things to ponder here as I wrap things up. Education awareness is important. Two-factor authentication is important, but not something like phone factor. I'm not saying phone factor is bad, but it's poorly implemented. Let me just put an example. The last 6 pen tests I've been on that has phone factor, I've gotten around them. Anybody know how? Right? Don't think technical. It's not like hey, I just created this awesome 0 day for phone factor. No. No. So I'll harvest them. I'll grab their credentials, right? And I go to log into OWA or VPN, and I type in my username and password. Then what happens with phone factor? It calls or sends a text message, right? So you get a call and it says, hey, Bob, are you trying to log into OWA right now? What is that user going to do 100% of the time? Yes. My phone must be logging in right now. Yeah, of course I am. Yeah, it's good to go. The last 6 pen tests I've been on, every single time I run the phone factor, yes. Like literally, I harvest a credential and it says, all right, we're calling you right now on phone factor. I go and I get a beer from the fridge and I come back and I'm already logged in. It's great. It's like the most awesome two-factor authentication ever. It's just like, I have a little bit of delay. I'm sorry. I'm going to stop you for about 30 seconds. Up-to-date software is always good. Uncategorized software I talked about. If you haven't seen the Enhanced Mitigation Experience Toolkit, or EMIT, check it out and write it down. It's a free tool from Microsoft. It literally stops almost all the known 0 days today. There are ways of getting around it. Jared DeMont did a talk on how to bypass all of the countermeasures within EMIT. But literally, like all the canned exploits in Metasploit, not going to work, other than like Java ones, because Java's just like so bad. It's like, it's like sandbox escape, so you can't really fix those. But like traditional exploits like return-oriented programming or ROP gadgets, it stops those. Again, there's bypass techniques for those. Stops a lot of the different types of techniques that we use as exploit researchers every day. Again, free, easy. I mean, it's actually really kind of hard to install. You have to double-click the MSI and hit next like 4 times and hit finish, and you're good. Which is really challenging for us for some reason. I don't know. It's just freaking crazy. So It's really easy. A couple configuration options I recommend, but we just did a huge deployment for a company that deployed it across their entire environment with no issues whatsoever. It's amazing. What's that? Yeah, there's a, talk to me a little bit. There's a flag that you have to uncheck for it. So you actually go to right-click configure application, and then there's a list of all the protection mechanisms. There's one of them there that's actually not going to impact anything on the security portion of it that fixes Chrome. My wife ran into that too. Here was one of the first 0 days that came out that actually checked for Emmet. And it actually looked for the Emmet DLL, and if it found it, it just killed itself and died. It didn't actually run the exploit code. Pretty cool. It just gave up. So listen. I talked about a lot of stuff. Blue team isn't always necessarily the sexiest part because you have so many responsibilities and we're so overloaded in what we're doing in our organization. And I understand, I was there too. But if you work together, I mean, there's such a better way for us to build defensive capabilities that are just more larger in scale to protect the whole company versus these little macro things that we have to focus on a day-to-day. So working together, we can figure out things and smashing up and blowing up the Googles. So for me personally, the team together, the combination of both the purple team, or the red team and blue team is sexy. I mean, I think it's awesome. I think it's fun. I get excited when I get to do work with people in the defense because they have cool stuff that they've been working their entire lives for that I've never heard of before. I'm like, dude, that is a brilliant idea. You should like talk about stuff like that. Like, I was at a company recently, and like they had a really creative way of getting around set. And I'm like, that's brilliant. Now I wrote a bypass for it and then published it in the code like 2 minutes later, but it was awesome at the time. You know, I mean, it worked good at that time. I mean, it was good up until they told me. Obviously, I worked with them on fixing it longer term. But there's a lot of things that you can do to work together, okay? And so wrapping things up, we are getting better. Security is on the news. Security is in our board of directors. I mean, I had a CIO for one of my buddies that works for a Fortune 5 come up to me. We were in Florida together. He's like, dude, he's like, I was literally talking about a whole bunch of IT architecture stuff, and the board of directors interrupted me and asked me what we're doing about all the security stuff and if I needed any more funding. I'm like, dude, that's awesome. We have to capitalize on that. We have to take that nugget that we have right now and then amplify it with the sledgehammer. And then we can start fixing the 10 years of sins that we've had in the past of not doing things properly because our business doesn't want to invest in us for security issues, okay? So we're getting there now, and it's a really cool time. I'm really excited to be a part of InfoSec right now because we have so many brilliantly talented people that are coming up through the industry, new people, old people, middle people. We're all working together for one common cause, and we're finally getting that recognition that we always wanted. But we have to get better. I mean, attacks aren't going to magically stop. They're going to get more and more sophisticated, and if we don't fix things now, if we keep going on the technological path of just slamming something in that's supposed to stop APTs, we're going to be really hurting down the road 5 or 10 years from now. I mean, like really bad, almost beyond repair stuff, is my personal opinion, okay? So defenses, build your defenses off of this strategy. I mean, it's really the only thing that matters. You're trying to stop attacks. What's the best way to stop attacks? Defense, right? And to understand the attacks, right? Let me ask you a question. Is anybody here from the military? Thank you for your service, by the way. In the military, did you ever practice? All the time, right? That's your whole life, right? Did you practice defense?
Quite a bit.
Offense? A lot, right? We knew both, right? You need to know how to defend your platoon, right? Or defend your base that's getting attacked. I mean, I was in Iraq for a couple of years, and we kind of knew how to defend our bases and never got overrun, but we also knew how to go on the offense. Those are the things that we have to practice together to figure things out. The military does a very good job of what they do. We do as well. And so, last but not least, build a purple team. Employ hackers. I mean, having hackers internally on your staff that focus full-time on red team is awesome. Those are much more effective than hiring consultants to come in and like have no idea what your network is and figuring things out. I mean, having the teams on the inside work well. And so until we train and train hard and prepare ourselves for offensive capabilities, we cannot have effective defensive countermeasures. It's not possible. So we're just going to keep scrapping and scrapping and scrapping until we actually fix things. Anybody have any questions? Yes, sir. I've actually had an individual cry. Like in front of me, like bawling, like a grown man, like 45, crying, huh? No, I mean, a lot of it's like, I'm not surprised. Most of the attitude is, I'm not surprised. I knew this was going to happen. You know, we suck, blah, blah, blah. We know it. We just, we'll fix it later or whatever. But some of the reactions you get are genuine of like, how do we actually focus on fix on this? And people do take it really personally. When you find those type of companies, you want to latch on to them because those are the people that will actually make it. I mean, prime example, there was a manufacturing company that we did work for a couple years ago. And when we first started there, real wide open, everything else. And the program has changed to a completely different thing that I could never see. And they're probably one of the most secure companies I've ever seen before on the face of this earth in a short period of time. I'm talking like board visibility, presenting to the board, everything else. You work at it. So I mean, the reactions you get, it just depends on the people itself. Hopefully that answered your question. Well, thank you very much, CircleCityCon. I really appreciate it. Thanks. Hope you had a good time.